Fine. All right. So, Bruce, I have a question for you.
So what's the big deal?
Are you a big thinker or a small thinker?
Well, I don't know. What do you think?
I think that most people are small thinkers,
Hmm.
and that's okay. But I think you're a big thinker.
Okay. Well, that's a big thing.
It is. Yeah.
Yes.
So, tell me about big thinking versus small thinking.
Well, it's interesting. So I was in a meeting the other day where people were suggesting solutions to a problem,
Hmm.
and they're suggesting that, oh, maybe we can do this type of program or that program, et cetera. And including myself, I suggested some possibilities, and then this guy basically says, "I think this is all small thinking. I think we need to think bigger."
Mm. And
And
that
so,
that was meant as a compliment, I'm sure, right?
yeah. Well, usually when someone comes in and says, "You guys are all small thinkers. I'm the big thinker here." Yeah, that's usually a compliment to
Yeah.
everyone. Yeah. So yeah, and then so what was this uh, big thought that this person had? Well, the big thought was that this person would get folks, a bigger organization to help come up with a solution.
Oh, so the big thinking was to get somebody else to do the thinking.
Yes, pretty much.
Oh, oh, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
That's very funny.
So yeah, I've actually
I
seen that a fair number of times.
I would not count that as big thinking or small thinking, but no thinking.
Yeah, or other thinking.
Yeah,
Yes,
because
or
yeah.
help me think.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't,
exactly.
or I don't want to think.
Yeah.
We just need to get others to think.
Yeah. Not somebody suited for a think tank.
Could be
Mm.
depending on what you want to think about, or maybe the person was thinking on thinking.
Maybe.
Yes, possibly. But I've actually seen this a fair amount of times where people will label things as small thinking and big thinking,
Mhm.
um, as if these are like these two distinct buckets. And like you said, um, typically, typically it's not compensated. Oh, I really like your small thinking,
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
or yeah, I think we really need to get smaller in our thinking. You don't usually hear those things. So typically, if someone comes in and labels things as small thinking and labels things as big thinking, they're considering the small thinking to be inadequate, right?
Right.
Not enough, um, not good, deficient.
Mhm.
Whereas the big thinking, you don't hear this to, the problem with you is you're a big thinker. Like it's somehow
Yeah.
been labeled as the right thing to do that everyone should strive for. Right.
That's true.
Yeah.
What you're saying makes I've heard this all the time too, and I never think about it.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a joke, and
Yeah.
my husband tells it all the time, and it is that he's the big thinker.
Hmm.
He solves all the problems in the world, and I just make sure that we survive and eat and, are housed and all of that, that
Hmm.
our daily living is taken care of by me, but he will be able to solve all the problems in the world. So,
Yeah.
um, it's funny because you can be a big thinker, but you may not be able to have all the things happening in your day-to-day life.
It also reminds me of another story where a bunch of us were gathered in a room, and it included a bunch of kind of tech leaders and public health and health leaders. And one of the tech leaders says, well, the reason why we still have malaria around is because people in global health don't think outside the box.
Yeah.
And of course, the response was, well, malaria has been around for thousands of years. So it's not like any particular people aren't thinking outside the
Yeah.
box. But I think it goes to this trying to separate that, oh, yeah, these are big ideas, these are small
Mhm.
ideas. Um, and then I find that, like you were pointing out, well, you need the whole
You
range,
need the whole range.
right? It's like saying that, I'd really like a car, but without the parts inside.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Or I really want to focus, on what the car looks like. I want the car to look cool, but I'm not going to worry about the engine.
Right.
Yeah.
No, you do
So,
need both. And, that was a joke that, he would say, "Ha ha, I am a big
yes.
thinker." And the joke was that he would not survive if he didn't have any of the
Yes.
other things going on. But you do need both. And I think that a lot of times people get stuck in the mundane,
Yeah.
and that's not good,
Yeah.
right? I'm just going to continue on without thinking of anything new.
Yeah.
And then there's the thinking that there's something big and that that's going to be amazing, but you have to be able to implement it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
You mean it's a problem whenever I go into like these problem solving sessions and say, well, time travel,
Yes,
that would solve
exactly.
everything.
Yeah, exactly,
Right.
exactly.
That's thinking big, right?
That's very big
Yeah.
thinking. Yeah,
Because if you're able to time travel, then why bother? You can always like correct everything. It's just,
yeah,
just go back to where, this problem started and just solve it, right?
exactly. You're
Yeah.
right. I think that so how did we get here where people think that unless you're thinking like big thoughts,
Yeah.
that you're not why bother?
Yeah.
And when did the mundane become mundane? Because it's really not mundane. I have to tell you that, making yourself so that you can live or your company operates or that you are,
Yeah.
you know, uh, getting through your schoolwork or doing whatever you have to do, that has to get done.
Yeah.
Why is that negative in some way?
Well, it's interesting because I think the extremes, of course, tend to be deficient, right? So
Hmm.
if you're just so focused on doing one little thing and you don't think about the implications, you don't think about, everything else,
Yeah.
yes, that may not be good. Like, okay, if you were to say, um, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something where you would just focus exclusively on something the entire day. Um, like you are focusing on a jar of cookies and all day you're wondering what's happening to that jar of cookies.
Hmm.
You're driving, oh, geez, what's happening to that jar of cookies? You're at work, oh, what's happening to that jar of cookies? Okay, that probably would be not great, right? But the other extreme is not good either, right? If you're someone who's just thinking about grand ideas without practicality,
Right.
without thinking, I mean, it's easy to think about grand ideas,
Hmm.
right? Time travel is a grand idea. It's a good idea. Um, you know, unlimited sushi, that's a
Hmm.
good idea,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
That's important.
Yeah.
Um, or like a some type of let's create a vacuum device to suck up all the pollution.
Yeah, that would be a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big idea.
Yeah.
So big ideas can be easy to think of, uh, but you need all that smaller stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I don't know. Yeah, it's an interesting question of like how that actually, that labeling actually occurred.
Yeah. I think it has evolved.
Hmm.
When I was starting out in the workforce, there was no shame in having a job where you did your job and you went in and you sort of grinded it out,
Yeah,
right? There was actually pride in that. I'm going in,
yeah,
I'm doing my job, I'm going to do things. But nowadays, you have to feel like you're accomplishing something big or putting something out big, putting your name on something, a label on something. It feels like that has changed. And sometimes you have to do the grind.
yeah,
Like laundry has to get done if you're at home. But if
yeah,
you're out at work, the stuff has to get emailed. The stuff has to be like maybe put in a database or something has to happen or you need to follow the steps to get something um, through the pipeline. And that has changed that feeling.
where it might have, I don't know if it started here, or it just represented where things started changing. But, there was a lot of talk like in the 90s and early 2000s about thinking big or,
Hmm. Thinking outside the
changing or
box.
changing the world. Like,
Yeah.
people would always say, well, you should always think about how you can change the world, or people talking about changing the world, that they've changed the world when, okay. But then a lot of people could claim that they changed the world, and almost everyone could change the world in some ways, right? You clean up an area, you've changed the world. So, but there was a lot of that talk, and I'm wondering if that like went a little too overboard
Maybe.
with things.
Maybe. I
Yeah,
think that it falls in line sort of with the leadership stuff where you are a big thinker or somebody who leads or you're where there's like nothing.
Yeah.
You know, uh, that's to me a little bit crazy. I think
Yeah.
we need the big thoughts and we need the small
Yeah.
thoughts. We need the
You're either the big thinker or the loser.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that we've polarized things as
Yeah.
opposed to saying, I'm going in and doing what I need to do.
Mhm.
I'm going to get things done. I'm going to accomplish something.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a task done. And the completion of a task has been really minimized in a lot of areas where that's seen as something, um, that you're not prideful of.
Yeah. Well, there's also been, if you take a look back at a lot of, for instance, the big companies, um, the big organizations that have really, they've changed a lot. But there's many cases in which they started off differently.
Hmm.
It's not as if they tackled big, huge problems at the very beginning. Um, if you look at, for instance, companies like Google or something like that, what did they actually start off as? They started off as, if I recall correctly, the idea was to initially help find library books or easier, and it became a search engine.
Hmm.
So the big question is whether, at what point was they say, oh, well, we could do this and that, and this, that might have come along the way,
It
as
could have.
opposed to be at the very beginning. But there can be this belief that, aha, I've come up with this big idea, and then it's just executing throughout. But I haven't seen that in actuality that often where people
No,
guys,
I haven't either.
yeah, many times it's actually a surprise as you kind of do one step, and then further along, you're like, oh, wow, we can do this and then that,
Yeah.
etc. So, so part of it is this myth, this big picture myth, I
Hmm.
think. So,
Yeah, you're right. It's something that I hope that we can sort of tackle and accomplish, making a change in the way that we think about and speak about the way we work together.
mm,
That ideas, put them out there. Maybe sometimes a small idea, as you say,
mhm,
is a functional one that's going to make something more efficient.
yeah,
Maybe it's something that's going to lead to something bigger because you need the progression. I think it falls in the same line of leadership where people feel like if I'm not in a leadership role, I'm nothing.
yeah,
Um, but we're really sort of quantifying our roles, I think, and our thoughts in ways that are very polarized. We need to change that. I think by acknowledging that, um, if we are not into being in a leadership role, if we are not out there saying, I want to change the world right now with a big giant thought, it does not mean you're not making impact.
absolutely, yeah. I remember watching a movie. It was an older movie where it was portraying this character as he got older, and the character was a kid, and the parents were saying, "Why aren't you doing your homework?"
Hmm.
And the kid said, "Well, the universe is expanding." And they say, "Well, what what does that matter?" And he says, "Well, if the universe is expanding, um, then ultimately it's going to implode. It's going to collapse upon itself." And the parents were like, "Okay." It's like, so it's pointless to do the homework. And they were like, "Just do your homework."
Yeah.
But that stuck with me as, that's the big idea excuse. Well, if you look at the
Yes.
big grand scheme of things, what really matters? So you can explain away doing anything
That's
like that.
true. You're right about that.
Um, so, but what you said is, I think one of the keys you have to remember that, well, you really there's all these little steps that actually lead up to things. And
Hmm.
you can't sit there and say, well, unless, you don't sit there and say, well, I won't do this. I won't do my homework
Right.
because it doesn't matter, because ultimately this is the big thing that's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. That's sort of this fatalistic, view. So,
I see so many people that don't try new things
mhm,
because there's that feeling of it's overwhelming.
yeah.
Big ideas are overwhelming.
Yep.
Where do you start?
Yeah.
What's the next step? And it doesn't even matter how big the idea is, but whatever that is, so that can make it even harder to implement a new idea or to get one started, or even if you think of one, oh, I'm going to back it up because I feel like that's going to be overwhelming for me.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
I wrote some about, something related to this in my regular Psychology Today. funny bone to pick thing. I wrote about how if you feel like you're like, oh my goodness, you feel overwhelmed, you don't know what to do, take a baby step,
Yes, that's
right?
true. Yeah.
So and I've seen this so many times, especially recently, because there are people thinking, oh, there's all these things going around the world. What can I do? So then the default is, well, I can't do anything about big things in the world, therefore I just won't do anything, right?
Right.
But there's that saying that, well, there's three things that you can do. You can take the right action, you take the wrong action, take no action, and which one's the worst?
No
No
action.
action. So many times the best thing is just do something,
Yeah.
like take a baby step,
hmm
and then don't expect like major changes. Don't
Right.
expect to say, "Oh, I did this," and then go to sleep and wake up and oh, it's a different world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's
usually
true.
not going to happen. Yeah,
I think I see that with writing. There are a lot of people who start writing and they put themselves on a platform like Substack, and they will say, "Oh my gosh, I don't have any followers, or I don't have anybody reading what I'm reading," and it's very discouraging.
yeah,
And so it's take the first step, which is, continue to write.
yeah,
The next step is, um, go out and read other people's stuff and interact a little bit.
yeah,
But there's always a step that you can take.
yeah.
And I think that we've come to a place where we expect overnight to be viral or something.
Yes.
And it just takes time for people to get to know you.
No, it takes at least 2 days. Yes,
Exactly.
everything takes at least
Exactly.
and then you can expect huge, gigantic success in 2 days.
Exactly. Yeah.
1 day is unreasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
So, yeah.
But I do see that a lot on Substack where I'm on notes and I'm reading through them, and I see people saying that they wanted more from something more quickly.
Yeah.
And that all falls into the line of the same stuff.
Mhm.
The big thing, the expectations that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the focusing on the outcomes, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to the actual process.
Right, right.
Um, but you will really run into like a really successful athlete, for instance, that will say that's the reason why that athlete did that thing,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
It's usually instead the athlete has a love for the sport
right,
and then just kept going and going and going and going and the practicing all the stuff that you don't see.
right.
I don't think there's too many athletes I've seen or talked to that will say that, yes, I started this sport because I wanted to win the gold medal or that I wanted to win the Super Bowl or,
Yeah,
you know, win the Wimbledon or whatever. It happened.
right,
It happened along the way, but they actually
right.
enjoyed kind of the little aspects of what they were doing.
They were intrinsically motivated.
Yeah.
And I think that, I remember being I'm intrinsically motivated by a lot of the very small things that
Mhm.
people think are small.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy them. And I know I'm not alone.
So give me some examples.
So I like organizing my work. I like preparing my stuff for the day.
Mhm.
I like having spreadsheets.
Okay.
I like all of that stuff. Those are not considered big thinking things.
Mhm.
Those are not considered, those are things that a lot of people would say those are boring or not
Unless
important.
it's a very big spreadsheet.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
But those are the kinds of things that make it so it's easy to run things.
Mhm.
When you have those sort of things you can go in and every day fill them out, complete them, do them. And um, that's an intrinsically motivated thing. I enjoy it because
Mhm.
people who are intrinsically motivated do things like crossword puzzles or they like to read. They do things because nobody makes them do them.
Mhm.
I do this because even though nobody makes me do it.
Mhm.
The athletes go and practice, even though another person might say, I don't like working out. That's no fun. But they do it because they love it. They feel good with it. And it's those little daily things that make the difference between the big outcome or an outcome and no
Yeah.
outcome.
Well, I decide whether or not to do something if it will solve climate change problem. If it
Yeah.
won't, I won't do it.
Yeah.
So yeah. So then, as a result, I don't do anything.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, um, I remember back in the 80s and 90s when I was working, and there just wasn't like a goal that you should be achieving at the end that was um, self involved.
Hmm.
There was now that we have a lot of things that are put out there where like we are now, out doing a live stream, there wasn't as much public facing work that was being done or looking to get acknowledgement for that. And I think that that's part of where we have the big idea or big thinking thing. Like
Hmm.
you should be putting yourself out there with a big idea or a big thought or something big that's going to get you recognized.
Yeah.
And when we didn't have that, people felt good about their jobs. Meaning that they went out and they did the things that they did and, would pursue their pleasure activities like sports and whatever after work.
Yeah.
I still see people doing that, but there's a lot of need to feel like you're a big thinker, to
Yeah.
feel like you're a leader, to feel like you can portray yourself in that way.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the case, you know. I mean, that was a long time ago in the late 80s and 90s, but it had a different feel and vibe to it. There was
Yeah.
more pride in a job.
Yeah. I've seen people actually write off entire professions, like criticize entire professions,
Exactly.
say,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, you guys don't do anything big." And
Right.
and in fact, I remember there's someone that wrote an article once for some publication and going through different professions and explaining why they're worthless, and
Why?
then explaining why the only folks that really do anything in this world are like business leaders, and those people come up with these, and successful entrepreneurs. They drive everything, and not even just all entrepreneurs, the ones who do the
Yeah.
big changes, etc. So it's basically the person basically pooped on the entire, like, basically everyone, right?
That's funny.
So, but yeah, I remember seeing that, and I was thinking, okay, this is absurd. You're basically saying that maybe people are useless.
Yeah.
Um, but but that piece got positive attention from folks who believe the same thing.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, again, I think sure it's good to think about like the future and improving things, etc. But you've got to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
I think that if we are thinking about the here and now, we should definitely put the focus on how do I get everything done
yeah,
right in the here and now.
yep,
And we should take
exactly.
pride in that.
Yep.
Hey, I can get this done. I'm just still kind of shocked that we have a hierarchy in getting things done.
Yeah,
Like that there's a hierarchy there.
yeah.
So,
Well, the other thing I've heard is I remember there was someone who wanted to make some changes and say, okay, well, we can just hire people to do each of the different things. So he had the big idea,
mhm.
but didn't actually know how to do it,
Oh,
and thought
that's tough.
thought he could just get other people to do it, to do it for him,
Yeah.
right? But like I said, that's we could sit here and think of big ideas, like really, really big
I solve
ideas.
all the problems of the world all the time
Yeah,
in my
exactly.
mind.
Yeah. Well, give me an example of a big idea.
I think we should have solar powered cars.
That's a good big idea. Yeah.
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 But I don't know how to implement that.
Yeah.
So I don't really tell many people that
Yeah.
because that's not going to make it very far.
Yeah. I think we should have a panel, like a thermostat, where we can control the sun.
Mm,
Say, oh, it's a little
good.
too hot today, and so you
Yeah.
sort of turn down the sun a little bit.
Yeah, that would work well for
Yeah.
my solar powered car.
Yeah, exactly. So like these are two big ideas that for a bigger idea.
Yeah.
You could call me up and you say, hey, you need this
I'm going for a
yeah,
drive, turn up the
drive. I
sun.
said, okay. It's just thermostat. Let's see which button is the which button is up or down with the sun. I can't remember. This is where you mute the sun.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I think that'll be a good idea. Now the key is if we want to do this, we got to find people who can do this for us. Like we got to find some sun experts,
Hmm.
because I can spell sun and I know the sun is upwards,
Hmm.
right? So I can point to the sun.
Yeah.
And the sun goes down, up and down, because
Hmm.
that's what happens
Hmm.
to the sun. But we need a sun expert. We need someone to build that thermostat.
Mhm.
someone to figure out how to like work. I assume it's going to be wireless,
Mhm.
right? Because then you
Yeah.
have a really long cord.
Yeah.
And what happens if the cord like gets pulled out?
That could be a
Then you
problem.
have to jump in a rocket and fly to like
Mhm.
Venus or Mercury,
Yeah.
like around there, and then put the cord back in, stuff like that. But these are small problems, right? Because I have the big idea.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So and then we have to find all these other kind of little idea folks to kind of put this all together. So
Exactly.
yeah. So you like the idea?
I do.
Yeah, it's a good idea. So I think I'll pat myself in the back.
Exactly.
Take this, take that. Actually, I need another big idea is to come up with a back pattern.
Oh, yeah, I like
Yeah.
that idea.
It's like a machine that every time I think of a big idea, I can pat myself in the
Oh,
back.
I like
So
that.
I can push the button and I don't even have to turn around or get someone
That'd be a
else.
good gift for a
Yeah.
lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we could get ourselves a back patter for all
Yeah.
the yeah,
Exactly.
we'd make a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's a good big idea.
Yeah.
I think that we should go for that one.
Yeah. We've come up with 3 big ideas already. And I can guarantee you if each of these ideas were implemented tomorrow, it'd be a huge change.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
So, thanks for coming on today, Bruce.
Well, thanks for having me.
And
It's very big of you. Yeah. Even though you just think of small things all
that's
the time.
right. I'm a
Yeah.
small thinker.
Yeah.
So I've run out of thoughts.
Yeah.
Time is coming to an end now
Yeah.
because
Yeah. I knew that
my thinking capacity
we were
is
gonna
ending.
exhaust your small thinking
Yes, exactly.
levels. And and this other guy during this meeting said all of us had small ideas. Now I'm trying to distance myself from you ultra small thinkers and
As
think
you
big
should.
ideas. And I think the sun idea will go a long way, although I'm a little worried because he might have a bigger idea than that.
Yeah, there's always somebody with the bigger
Yeah.
ideas in there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So and when it comes to ideas, size matters. So
that's right.
yeah.
So, anyway, I hope that everybody out there has some big ideas and some small ideas.
Exactly. But just
And
big ideas.
yeah,
Big size, small ideas
but
don't
don't
matter.
tell anybody your small ideas, only
Yeah.
the big ideas.
Yeah.
All right.